Hello everyone, welcome along to another stream. So today, as we do most Sundays after a race at around 6 p.m, we will talk about the top five talking points from the Austrian Grand Prix today. And as always, well, as normally, I am joined right here by Raggy. Hello Raggy.
Hello, I'm not dying. It's confirmed.
He's alive. He is alive and well. Yeah. He has been quite unwell for the last few weeks, bless him. But he is alive, as you can see, alive and kicking, which is good to see. With a beautiful haircut. Everybody comment on his haircut. He specifically requested a comment on his haircut, so we got to give him a shout out for that. As you may notice as well, in a new setting, I have moved house about a week ago or so now. I've already done one stream from here, but you may not have joined that stream. So I'm sat in my racing rig, despite doing no racing today. But this is the way I've all got my webcam and stuff set up. So anyway, on to the race. Well, personally, I thought it was a good race. I thought it was a really good race. I came away from that thinking, yep. That was a real cracking race, that one. However, some people on Twitter disagreed. I had several people in my mentions just sort of saying, I said like it was a banger race, and they were like, banger? Was it? Was it a good race? And I was like, are we even questioning whether it was a good race? To me, it was an undeniable good race. It wasn't like a 10 out of 10, but it was still like an 8 out of 10, in my opinion. There was plenty of action. Yes, it was pretty boring for terms of the win. Is that what maybe people are on about? But for me personally, I really enjoyed it. Raggy, are you in the enjoyed camp or in the thumbs down camp?
Oh, don't get me wrong. There was a moment where it was a little bit dull, but then at the beginning of the race was really, really good. There was the dull point, and then after that, yeah, it was really, really good. I thoroughly enjoyed the race. I think you've nailed it on the head. I do think it is entirely down to whether there's a chance for a different win on the cards, because everybody always wants to see somebody else win. In this case, Max Verstappen's winning, and already people are saying, well, this is getting boring because Max is winning every race now. But I think that's a whole different ball game anyway. But in terms of the actual race itself, there was overtakes, there was even a big crash. Yes, it was on the very last lap, but there was a big crash,
which we didn't see live.
Yeah, true. But there was a load of action that we did get to see. Loads of penalties being chucked at left, right, and center, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thought so too. I was genuinely surprised that people were suggesting it wasn't. I mean, if Max didn't unfortunately retire at the end of Baku, he would have just won 5 in a row. So I don't know if that's what people are just concentrating on and sort of saying it was, a bit of a rubbish race. And like I said, it wasn't a complete banger, but there was it wasn't like a 10 out of 10, but there was a lot going on. There was a lot of strategy as well going on with the things going on with the tyres, and we had Hamilton having a few issues, Norris podium, we had Russell almost getting the points, as you said. I thought there was a lot to digest there. Seemingly, from how I record it right now, pretty much the whole race, there was stuff going on. We did have a little lull here and there, but, the first 20 laps were filled with Hamilton trying to get past Norris, which is obviously crucial for him to try and chase down Verstappen, crucial for his championship fight. Norris as well, obviously doing a great job. I thought that was entertaining enough, even though it did take him 20 laps to do so. I enjoyed his radio, by the way, straight after he overtook him to say, really real respect to Norris sort of thing, which I was quite surprised to hear him say. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just going to have a little read of the comments here to see if anyone else... Someone said it was a 50-50. For me, it's a 50-50 good race. What is that? Does that make that a 5 out of 10 good race for Darkside Wolf? Feel bad for George, so close to points. Yeah, I agree with that. Unless Mercedes upgrade or find some pace, I think Red Bull will keep winning and McLaren close behind. I think it'll be interesting next time out. I think Silverstone will be a really good test to see how they'll do, because the last few races have really been quite straight line speed dominant. I know Monaco wasn't, but Baku was pretty straight line speed heavy, and so were obviously the last 2 races. France as well is quite straight line speed heavy, so I'm interested to see how they get on in the next race, especially as apparently Mercedes is bringing an update to Silverstone, so that'll be interesting. Talking about the penalties, we'll get onto that in a minute. Norris P3 was enjoyable to watch, absolutely. Yeah, and as well, it had a good result. I don't know. There was nothing about the race that made me think that was a bad race. It could have been a bit spicier, but it wasn't bad. I was really shocked. I genuinely didn't remotely consider it a bad race till people said in my comments. But anyway, it is what it is. I think we're in agreement here that it was still a pretty good race. I think me and Raggy are making the official decision here that it was in fact a good race.
We don't care what anyone else says.
Exactly. Right. We are the overlords here. We are the masters. We decide. True. So everybody else who thought it was a bad race, you are in fact wrong. Next up then we've got the stewards' decisions. Obviously that was quite a big talking point from this race. So we had, from my memory, 4 penalties. unless there's a post-race penalty for Raikkonen maybe. This is just from the race, of course. We had, first of all, Norris get a penalty for squeezing out Perez. We'll run through these in a bit more detail in a moment. Then we had Tsunoda get a penalty for crossing the pit entry line. Then we had Perez get a penalty for pushing out Leclerc. Then we had, I think then Tsunoda got another pit-in penalty. And then we had Perez get another penalty for pushing out Leclerc. I think that was the 4 penalties. Is there any more than that, Raggy? Yep. So I think
there was another one for was it not pit speed? No, it wasn't speeding. I thought there was another one. I'm sure there's a 5th one. I could be wrong.
There is 5, isn't there? Because it's 2 for Perez, 1 against Perez, 1 whatever, and then 2 for Tsunoda. So there is 5 penalties that I can recall. RR Jenab saying 2 for Tsunoda, 1 for Norris, 2 for Perez. Giovinazzi and Stroll. What did Giovinazzi and Stroll get?
Yes. Stroll got a penalty as well. That was the other one I was thinking of. Giovinazzi was under investigation, but I don't remember if he got a penalty.
What did Stroll get 1 for?
Stroll got one for a pit entry or a pit exit problem.
Okay, I don't recall that. Anyway, let's get into the details of them then. So obviously, first off, we had Norris's penalty. Now, there's a definite wider talking point here of what is considered good hard racing, and then what is considered over the line and deserves penalising and shouldn't be acceptable. And that's the conversation I want to get into today. For me, Perez, the Perez-Norris incident, when Norris squeezed him out, it was aggressive. It was possibly a little bit over-aggressive. I can see how they gave a penalty. Personally, I wouldn't have given a penalty, but I can see how they have, because they were pretty much wheel to wheel. When he did squeeze him out, it was probably a bit over the line. Honestly, though, for me, the bigger mistake was actually Perez in that incident, is that, Norris said before the race, hey, I'm going to race these guys hard. I want to get a result today. I don't just want to let them pass like last race. So I was expecting him to fight hard. Perez is in a good car. He should be up there with Max. If he managed to get past Norris, he would have probably very easily got a P2, you imagine. So it was up to him with the faster car to be to be patient. So although it wasn't his fault, when you go around the outside of someone, you're taking a risk. When you're in a faster car, when you're in Red Bull, which Verstappen has showed this weekend is pretty dominant at the moment, around that track at least, don't take that risk. Back out of it, try again the next lap. Go again. Again, it was Norris's fault. Harsh on the penalty. It is what it is. I feel like I'm going to let Raggy jump in here because I feel like he's got some opposing opinions to give. Let's go. Hit me with them.
You saved yourself at the end. Penalty is deserved, hands down. Regardless of whether or not it's a risky move. I agree, it is a very risky move, and I think Perez is definitely taking a gamble when he goes for the outside line through that corner. We saw that with Albon, and I think that the penalty was suffice. Granted, obviously he ended up in a much worse situation, but looking at specifically Norris and Perez getting put off in the gravel, and he ended up falling right down the way that he did. The penalty was definitely just because he needed to give him space. That's just a general rule etiquette. You cannot just put someone off the track, because that is the track limits he's breached there by doing so, and that ultimately is the problem. There seems to be this weird thing in F1. I don't understand exactly what it is, but there seems to be this weird thing in F1, which is you can just basically push people off the track, and that's accepted. This isn't accepted in any other motorsport that I'm aware of. I don't understand why F1 is so different. Granted, the cars are much faster and there's a lot more aerodynamical grip, but that sounds like you've got less of an excuse to me than anything else. Like, you should be able to maintain this. I mean, the same for Perez on Leclerc. The one where he had physical contact with him, absolutely penalty, no doubt about it. And then the other one where it just forced him off the track, absolutely penalty, no doubt about it. I think, in my opinion, it's very clear cut. If you have somebody who's alongside you, there's more than halfway alongside you, you have to give space. That's literally been the rule since forever. I don't understand why people are saying, no, that's not fair. We need to let them we need to let them race and stuff like. Yes, they need to let them race. But what you don't understand is that people are currently getting away with being able to push people off the track, which is actually not. It's discouraging them from actually trying to make a move like that. Because I imagine if people knew that the other drivers were going to give them the respect they needed when they go side by side through that turn 4, then they would probably go for an outside move more often. But, I mean, let's look at it. How many times have we seen people go around the outside through that corner? And how many times have we seen people get pushed off the track because it's fine to do in F1? I mean, granted, today, it was very much that's not allowed. And I'm glad But the stewards have taken that stance because that's exactly the stance that we should be promoting, in my opinion.
I think.
All right, I'm ready. I'm ready for you to come get me now.
Get the pitchforks out. No, for me, I do agree. I think the issue is that the line where it's too far and where it's fair racing is hazy. That is the issue to me. I don't mind that, the person on the outside is the one that has to back out. I don't know. I don't think that happens in other sports too. I think F1's just a bit more extreme in that you can be 3/4 alongside someone and get squeezed out, and that's okay in F1, whereas I think in GT cars maybe that's less okay. However, if you're a quarter alongside in a GT car, you're still getting squeezed out. It's still going to happen. Like, it's not like as soon as you're a tiny bit onside in other motorsports, you get all the room in the world. You still get squeezed out. F1, because it's the pinnacle, it's just the most extreme version of that. Downforce, with blind spots and that kind of thing. But as I said, I think to me, it's all about defining this is too much. I think at the moment the rules are vague. I think there's something like, you can't force a driver off the track and you have to give them fair racing room. They're all very, very vague. There's no precise rules. To me, they need to come out with a new rule and say, hey, look, if any part of the overtaking car's wheel is alongside the other car's wheels, as in rear wheel to rear wheel, front wheel to front wheel, so almost completely side by side, then they have to give room. The reason I say that is because, before that you can get squeezed out. Before that also they probably can't see them. There's a bit of vision there. If they're wheel to wheel, they can see the car. They know they're there for sure. You can't say I couldn't see him, and if you do, you weren't looking, that's your own fault. You can see them when you're wheel to wheel. And that is a very clear line, and the stewards can then look at the replays and go, hey, look, was his front wheel alongside his front wheel? If it was, and he pushed him off, that's the penalty. If he wasn't, and they got squeezed out, it is what it is. That's racing. If you clearly define it, then also the drivers have got a clearly defined rule. At the moment, it's kind of up to the drivers to decide how aggressive they want to be. If they want to be aggressive, like we saw Norris and Perez be today, they can push it. Once they're wheel to wheel, they can still keep pushing them out. They were given about penalties today. We've seen in the past, at the same track a couple of years ago, Verstappen on Leclerc didn't get a penalty. We've seen other incidents where they don't get a penalty for that. So it's just a bit vague whether you get a penalty. But some drivers squeeze them out wheel to wheel. Other drivers wouldn't even be that far and would give room. I would suggest someone like Raikkonen would tend to give a bit more room than someone like Verstappen in general. He would just squeeze them out a bit earlier or later, whichever way. So I don't know. Yeah. I felt like the Norris penalty probably was fair just about, but it was a 50-50. It was close because he was never ahead. Perez was never ahead. It was wheel to wheel. Though. Exactly. It was just about wheel to wheel, which says to me should have had a penalty. Obviously, the outcome was massively harsh. If there was tarmac there, he would have just gone a bit wide, probably still would have even taken their position, which, I do prefer there's gravel there than tarmac. But I thought that penalty was kind of harsh a little bit, but obviously Perez came off much worse. The other incidents I thought were fair. I think Perez shoving Leclerc off in the same corner was far too much. Leclerc was actually ahead and still got shoved off. Perez literally had to push him off, from slightly behind to get back past him. That was a slam dunk penalty every day of the week for me. The other one I think was more similar to the first one when Perez pushed Leclerc off in the following corner. Yeah, I don't know. That one could have gone either way as well to me. Again, the issue to me is there's not clearly defined rules. The stewards decided to draw the line in the sand there today. Another race, when there's not gravel there, they'll draw a different line. I think we need to define the track limits more clearly and consistently, and we need to define the overtaking rule more consistently. You agree, Raggy?
I think, personally, if I've never heard the rule of you need to be ahead in order to claim right to space.
It's like an unwritten gentleman's agreement at the moment, isn't there? Which is the issue because it can get broken.
It's so bad. It's so bad. I mean, for me, and I've always been of this as a mindset is if you're half alongside someone, you're entitled to room, right? That's just maybe that's a GT thing. I don't know, but if you're half alongside someone, they're entitled to space. And yes, I know you don't want to give that position up. And granted, in F1 cars, there's a lot more to it than just that, but I think you must be ahead in order to be given space is just ridiculous. I think the track limit side of things, I think should be more. I think there's like a system to it because obviously not every corner is going to be the same pattern, right? It's not always going to be dictated by a line, for example, like that turn 4. It's more dictated by the curb because as soon as you come off the curb, you're in the sand, and if you're in the sand, you're done for. So I think personally, it's more of a you got the line, and then if it's not the line, it's the curb, the surface, and if it's not the surface, then you need to be given that space. That's my opinion anyway.
I don't agree with the halfway part because it's a lot harder to judge. If you go front wheel to front wheel, you can look at the T-cam and very quite quickly make a pretty damn near judgment on whether they were wheel to wheel before you decide on a penalty as a steward. Halfway, the driver can't really tell whether they're technically halfway or not yet. The stewards rely on having a perfect angle, which is unlikely. The T-cam won't be able to see them if they're halfway alongside. I don't know. Are you coming at it more from maybe a sim racing point of view, where you get the proximity arrows and you've got better cameras?
No, just in general. I mean, yes, I will agree. It's much harder in an F1 car because the cockpit covers a lot of your visibility, so you haven't got a lot of peripheral vision, and you're more reliant on whatever little mirrors you've got, and they are tiny, and what you can actually see out of the cockpit. So, you know what? Yeah, maybe the 50% rule isn't quite as good or as effective in F1, and maybe it does need to be more unique for F1 than it does in every other form of motorsport. But I just think, I think we're both saying the same thing effectively, which is it needs to be much more clear cut in the definition for the rule in order for the drivers to be able to then go ahead and do it. However, all of the penalties today, in my opinion, every single one of them were correct. I don't think any of them were wrong, in my opinion.
I think I agree. I think some of them were a bit more marginal in my opinion, than you're making out. But I do agree. I think if I had to make a decision, penalty or no penalty, I feel like I would have made all the same decisions. Noah here's dropped an interesting comment. He said, I still think it's not fair for Leclerc. He ended behind Perez and had so much more pace in those laps. So I think it's not fair that Leclerc is ending behind Perez. I don't think the 10-second help. It's true, because a faster car can just go, I'll take the penalty because I know I'll be able to pull away once I get past this guy. But I said maybe they also need to change the penalty maybe, so it should be let the guy behind past. That's it. Obviously, it doesn't always work because if there's now a few cars between them, especially in the Norris incident, he's now 10 cars back. It's not fair to make Norris drop all the way back. But is it? I don't know. Anyway, but it's a good point though, because the Clerk would have been ahead of Perez if he already overtook him once. He would have been ahead again, and clearly Perez didn't want it to happen. I think Perez was obviously a bit frustrated from being pushed off by Norris, and then frustrated that his race wasn't going as well as he would hope. But yeah, I think we draw a line under that one for now. Actually, one final thing I wanted to touch on is I tweeted about it as well. The commentators were moaning a lot about the penalties. They were saying, "Oh my word." Yeah, so here we go. So yeah, they just kept saying. So this is the David Croft and the Paul di Resta commentary, and I feel like Martin Brundle would have had a different opinion, by the way. But so basically, they were saying, "What are all these penalties? Stop giving penalties. We want to see racing." And sometimes I agree with that comment. Sometimes you go, "Yeah, why are you penalising? Stop. We just want to see some side-by-side racing." But penalties have to be there because you have to define the limits of racing. Otherwise, everybody's going to shove everyone off, and you're going to get less racing. Penalties make more racing happen, because you clearly define the limits. If nobody got a penalty for anything, the shoves like today, the ones from Perez that were over the line on Leclerc, would happen all the time because they're not getting a penalty. They're like, yeah, get out, you're not going the outside, push you in the gravel, job done. That would happen all the time. Giving penalties is trying to make sure that Perez and other drivers learn their lesson from that and go, it's not worth me pushing this guy off because I'm going to get a penalty. So the fact they're moaning about it, to me, was completely backwards and insane, because it should have been the other way around, if anything. They were giving penalties to try and encourage racing. So you seem to be nodding along, Raggy. Do you just agree with that?
I said at one point, what is Paul di Resta smoking? I'd have thought, as a driver, why would he not be in the same mindset as everyone else in that these penalties are justified and required? I'm pretty sure if you ask most of the F1 grid, ask all of the F1 grid, I'm pretty sure most of them would have said that was, right, there needs to be space given. I think a lot of the problems we've got is there's a very deluded conception of what racing is. For me, it's suspense, number one, and it's wheel-to-wheel racing. Problem with F1 is that the aero side of things, they're not allowed to be able to fight too closely because the car starts to overheat. It's not designed to be so close, and I think that's one of the main problems that we currently face. But yeah, I think the commentators.
So Casey's saying, if you rewatch the footage, the first incident, Leclerc turned into Perez with his V-shaped corner, and Charles started the contact, Perez finished it. I mean, obviously, he's got to turn at some point. He can't just drive straight into the gravel. He's going to turn thinking this guy's going to give me room. So I don't think that's quite right. But yeah, I agree. I think Yeah. Perez was just in the wrong. He was just too desperate. He was pushing people out left, right, and centre. The penalties were all correct. I was honestly miffed, like you said, by what the commentators were saying. I was like, no, this is wrong. And I actually haven't seen if Martin Brundle has tweeted. I know he tweeted a couple of things during the race. I don't know if he tweeted about that in particular. I'm going to have a quick check now. Because I'll be interested to see. Because I reckon Martin Brundle would have had a completely opposite opinion to that and thought, yeah, those penalties are fair. Nothing during the race he tweeted. But anyway, let's move on to our third point then. I keep forgetting to put the numbers in. That was the second point. This is the third point. Here we go. So my third point is softer tyres are key, ? We've already established, me and Raggy, the Overlords, have established that was in fact a good race. And last race, Raggy, was not a good race?
It was a bit boring, wasn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, bit boring.
Not a lot that happened.
Quite different week to week. And Pirelli went a step softer with the tyres. Obviously, little other things changed. The cars get more and more optimised. I'm sure some cars had little updates, setup tweaks, weather conditions. There's a lot of variables there, don't get me wrong. But it's the same track and fundamentally the same cars. Like, they're not going to have had a huge update week to week. The biggest difference was surely the tyres going a step softer. And although the majority of the pack certainly tried a one-stop. I know Verstappen ended up on a 2 just because he could, because he was that dominant today. He probably would have done a 1, and a lot of them would have done a one-stop. Norris did a one-stop, Bottas did a one-stop, Hamilton did a 2 because of his damage and lost the positions. And that's perfect. That's why it was a good race to me. You had a split between a 1 and a 2 stop. And although the strategies didn't collide as often as they do in that situation, often you get the 2 stoppers charging back through the pack. We didn't really see that today. Sainz seemed to be quite struggling to get past. He got let through Leclerc, and did he eventually get past Ricciardo? Yes, he did, didn't he? He got past Ricciardo in the end. Yeah. But not by... It was only just, and he had much fresher tyres. So it wasn't a huge difference, but I think it was enough. And it was also a bit more marginal on tyre wear, so they're having to look after their tyres more. And I know there's an opposing argument of saying we don't want them to look after the tyres, we want them to race hard every lap. I do get that. But it requires more management. It makes the racing more interesting. If they're just racing full beans every single lap and going for an easy one-stop, the racing would be boring because these cars can't follow next year. Obviously, it might be different. But yeah, I felt like the reason this was a good race was because of the softer tyres. We've mentioned it several times before with Pirelli. We want softer tyres. Today, that was a perfect example. I hope they keep it up. I also love the fact that they did split the tyre options, by the way. The fact they did bring softer tyres to the same track week in, week out. That was good. But yeah, I just enjoyed the soft tyres. I say bring on the same thing. If anything, make them even softer again. Raggy, agree?
As long as they don't have a repeat of what we had in Baku, then I'm in agreement. I
True.
think I just don't want to see a tyre fail like that. I mean, again, I only want to touch on it very briefly, but the Max Verstappen tyre pop that happened, if he'd gone the other way, that could have been a very different situation, and we may not have had Max Verstappen even racing today. But I'm very pleased that it didn't pan out that way, and I'm glad that we don't seem to have had a repeat of that. But yeah, as long as we avoid those situations, completely agree. I think that the softer tyres, basically making the drivers pit more, making the drivers struggle is more the point. I want to see that stress. I want to see that suspense from other drivers. And it makes for such fantastic racing that we get to sit here and watch it week after week. It's lovely.
I tell you what, really interesting word you use there, struggle. It makes the drivers struggle more, which makes the race more interesting, is basically what you just said. Yeah. And it struck me that if you do give them, infinite tyre wear effectively, they're struggling because they're trying to push the limit, just like in qualifying. Often they don't put in the perfect laps. Obviously, you can't do that at the moment because they can't follow, but from next year, when hopefully the cars can follow, we don't know how it's going to turn out for sure yet, but let's say the cars can follow half as closely and that they can consistently follow half a second back, then maybe we can start to introduce tyres that do last longer. Maybe the struggle is the entertaining part. Maybe you move the struggle from conserving your tyres and strategy to being on the limit every single lap, which is what we used to have. And that is then the struggle. The struggle is to not make mistakes and to try and drive right on the limit, which is an absolute art at every single corner and not make any mistakes. So maybe from next year we'll move the struggle to something else. But I think, for now, definitely softer tyres for me are indeed key to summarise that little headline. Next up for me then is going to be, I copy and paste it. Number 4, Hamilton damage is his title hopes. Bit of a double whammy there. I've done a little play on words. It doesn't really work, but that's how we roll. So yeah, obviously he got damaged, interestingly, from a curb of some kind. It wasn't clear which curb. They mentioned turn 10 over the radio, then we saw him thumping over turn 1. But it looked to me like he had some understeer going into that corner, so maybe that was a result of the damage. I'm not too sure, but often when they say, last race the car was damaged, that's why it was slow, you think, yeah, it was a tenth a lap. This is a bit of an excuse though. But you can see, it's Lewis Hamilton. We know how good he is, and he was pretty good until suddenly this damage, and then he finished. He finished 46 seconds behind Max in the end, and they both stopped twice, and he was only 15 seconds or so before the damage. So clearly he had some genuine damage. So I'll be interested to see from Mercedes what that damage is. Often they release a little thing on Wednesdays, like a debrief on Wednesdays, where they kind of go public with this sort of information. So hopefully they'll tell us it was a bit of floor damage from this corner. But more importantly, he damages his title hopes. I mean, he only finished 4th. Max Verstappen, if it wasn't for Baku, that would have been 5 wins in a row. And Hamilton's only finished 4th. Hamilton just can't beat him at the moment. He just can't. I mean, the car's too good around Red Bull. I'm interested to see, as I said, new update for them at Silverstone. What happens with them then? If they can bring a good update, maybe they can start to challenge them a little bit. But at the moment, I mean, let's find out. I don't know what the exact points gap is actually. It's just in here, isn't it? So if we go drivers, I think this is up to date. I think it's up to date, isn't it? Yeah, 32 points now. More than a race win. Max Verstappen leads Lewis Hamilton. That's a big gap. I don't know there's a long way to go in the season, but that is a big gap. By the way, it's still 46 further to Perez. Where's Bottas? 92. But Bottas has now got just over half the points of Max Verstappen. That's a bit of a shocker, but it is what it is. So that's huge. Apparently this Silverstone update for Mercedes is going to be their last of the season. We'll see if that actually turns out to be true. But if it is, are we about to see a brand new world champion? I know it's early days, but I mean, 32-point gap with the car they've got at the moment. Well, what do you think, Raggy?
I'm feeling ballsy enough to say it. Easy slaps.
Easy slaps.
Yeah, honestly, I don't see any way that he doesn't get this without any crazy amount of technical failures like what we saw in Baku. Again, praying that we don't see those. But I think, Mercedes have already said that they're no longer going to develop on the car. That doesn't mean they're not going to bring in more updates. I'm not saying that for sure. But I don't see now how Mercedes will have any answer to what Red Bull have currently got. Their car's phenomenal, and they are still developing the car. They're still bringing upgrades for the car. Already, even at the beginning of the season, it was very close between them. And so the fact that Mercedes have pretty much just said, we're pretty much writing this year off, is basically giving Max Verstappen the runaway he needs in order to get it. At the same time, it's actually allowing other teams to catch up quite considerably. It's allowing McLaren, for example, to actually put themselves in front of both Mercedes. Granted, it was only one driver that did it, and we're still waiting to see the other one pop up yet. But I think this is big for every other team within F1. I think it's horrific for Mercedes, and I think they're playing a massive gamble.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because if they do give up on this season and then they end up dominating the next year, like they did with this one, they'll happily take what is it, seven titles in a row? 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. They'd happily take 7 titles in a row if they have to give up the 8th in the next era. They will. If you said to Mercedes, we'll offer you that 7 out of the next 8 titles for the next 8 years from next year, they'd be like, yeah, that's worth it. Yep. But they also don't want to lose. They don't want to lose. They have been dominant. They want to keep this streak up. I think when they came out and said we're stopping developing, I think that was a bit of gamesmanship to try and make Red Bull stop developing. Actually, I think it was a bit of politics.
They won't. No way.
I do think don't get me wrong. I do think they've switched a lot of resources to next year, but I think they're downplaying the updates they've got in the pipeline. I think either they're confident they've got quite a few updates. I honestly don't think. Don't get me wrong. There's a point that they will give up. Obviously, I don't think that point's yet. I do not think that point's yet. I mean, how many races have we got left this season? Here we go. So, we're not even at the halfway point of the season. Not even at the halfway point of the season. I know you can't see that very clearly, but they've not given up yet. They're not that far away. 32 points is a fair chunk. Well, how to get on the constructors? Let's have a look. They're only 44 back in the constructors, which as a team is not that much. I don't buy it. They'll have a big update for the British Grand Prix where I reckon they're confident that they'll have the best car again. And I bet they've got another couple of little updates in the pipeline and they're just playing Red Bull, saying, "Yeah, no, we've stopped developing now. That's it. We're giving up," just to make Red Bull do the same. I think it's all gamesmanship. I really do. I don't think they're giving up that easy. I think once we get to say Monza, Italian Grand Prix down here, then they might start to stop updates. They'll have stopped developing by then for sure, but maybe that might be their last update. I don't think the halfway point of the season here is going to be their last update. No way. You disagree, Raggy?
Yeah, they're done. They're absolutely done. There's no way that they're even thinking about continuing doing what they're doing now, because there's just no logic to it from their perspective. They're just seeing it as I don't see how we can get through this now. There's just so much going on already from Red Bull, from McLaren. I think Red Bull's already so dominant. Mercedes don't have enough time to react to this. I don't think they're going to just lay down and say, okay, go on Red Bull, enjoy. But I also don't think that they're going to... They're basically pulling a Haas now, I think. Because Mercedes are a very all or nothing team, and if they can't take the win, then they're not in,
Mm. But exactly, that is why I think they'll continue developing longer than they're saying. I don't know. I reckon they've got a huge update for the British Grand Prix that will give them 0.3 a lap easy, that they think will put them quicker than Red Bull. And then there might be another couple of minor ones just to kind of keep them ahead. But obviously we don't know what Red Bull are going to bring either. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. But I don't know. I'm not buying it yet. We'll see. It's because look at the history. It's Mercedes. They've utterly dominated this era. There's no denying that. I just can't see them giving up that easy. They want to continue this dominance. I don't know. Let's review, shall we? After the next race, we'll do another one of these streams in 2 weeks' time. Let's review it then and see if suddenly they are dominant. Then see what we think then, maybe. But yes, anyway, that's that. They are where they are at the moment. I will also say they will be backing Bottas to beat Perez on average. So they're thinking more constructors. I would say they'd like both titles, but they're thinking, well, if Bottas can consistently beat Perez. And Hamilton can kind of maybe win 50% of the races over Verstappen. Maybe we'll sneak the constructors, but we need a car to be able to do that. So, yeah, we'll see. So, the fifth and final talking point before we go on to our drive of the day is the qualifying antics. Going back to qualifying then. So, let's get qualifying adopts. Oh, here we go. Raggy's clearly got some controversial points to make about this, but, oh, God.
Well, I don't think it's that controversial. I know this was a very controversial topic. I know there was a lot of people that were fired up about this and were saying a lot of contradictory things to other people, and I think this will be a juicy one. So,
to summarise then, the FIA basically said we won't accept drivers running too slowly between turns 9 and 10, which is the last two corners, because obviously it's dangerous. You're blind through there. You're in, 6th gear or so, maybe even 7th, no, probably 6th. You're doing, 150 miles an hour, I guess. It's dangerous. If cars are crawling, it can be dangerous. So they basically said, you're not allowed to go slowly through there. I don't know if they laid down an exact rule on that, but that's basically what they said. And then in qualifying, obviously, we saw them go slowly between 9 and 10. The issue that we want to get into is the fact that Alonso got blocked by Vettel. Now, there's obviously also a gentleman's agreement in qualifying that you're not supposed to overtake each other on the outlap. Certainly not at the end of it, unless you're significantly fast or the car is an issue, blah, blah, blah. The gentleman's agreement, almost instigated by Nikita Mazepin, interestingly, seems to have gone out the window a little bit this year. Not completely out the window, but there's certainly several drivers that are just overtaking. They're just not caring. They're just going for it. So I think we saw a combination of those issues today. Vettel was saying that basically he got overtaken by 2 or 3 cars, so he ended up at the back through no fault of his own because he was abiding by the gentleman's agreement. He wasn't overtaking. He was slowing down before turn 9 to try and abide by the FIA's rule of saying don't go slow between turns 9 and 10. And in slowing down before turn 9 and doing what he was told to do and abiding by the gentleman's agreement, he got overtaken by other people breaking the gentleman's agreement. Because they overtook him, the cars were then too bunched up and they had to slow down between turns 9 and 10, where the FIA told them not to slow down. Then obviously we had the unfortunate thing of Alonso getting held up, and he genuinely drove very well this weekend, by the way. Would have been way higher than 14th in quali, but got blocked. You saw how angry he was. Vettel also missed the line, so clearly it was just a whole big farce, really, the whole thing. But it's the issue to me. Let's go to the penalties. That's the issue, right? Vettel got a penalty, a 3-place grid drop. Fair enough, he blocked him. There's no denying that he blocked him. But I don't really understand. They did investigate Bottas and someone else. I don't really understand if they laid down a law to say you can't go slow between turns 9 and 10. People then broke the gentleman's agreement, which isn't a rule, it is a gentleman's agreement, then went slow through 9 to 10. I feel like the FIA were just a bit caught up in their own rules over this, because there wasn't a rule to say about the gentleman's agreement. It was probably an advisory rather than a rule between turns 9 and 10. I don't know. I think something like they should say, unless it's forced, you're not allowed to overtake in the final sector on an outlap. That should become a rule. Like a safety car rule almost. You can overtake if someone's literally crawling or have an issue or whatever, but you're not allowed to overtake. That they should make that a rule. Then they could clearly enforce it, and then it'd be very clear. The final sector line, that's it. I don't really understand why they don't. Do you agree with that, Raggy? Do you think the penalties was fair? Do you think between turns 9 incident? What do you think about all that?
I think if you take it as an isolated incident, and I think the question I'd ask Vettel is, what was he doing in the final corner that slowly? Like, regardless of anything, what was he doing at that point in that corner going so slowly? Because if he was setting himself up to go for a lap, he's already ruined his lap because of how slow he was going through the final corner. There's no way he's carrying anywhere near enough momentum in order to then... he's losing 4 tenths, thereabouts, at least, in the run-up towards turn 1 because of how slow he's going through the final corner. So I can understand him not seeing it, because the speed that the F1 cars come through the second to last corner in, reaction times will not be... So you'd have to be staring in your mirrors to see if anybody was coming in order to move out of the way of somebody at that point, right?
And also dive out of the way when you got there.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean, reacting to it, as in, if you had to just push a button as soon as you saw a car come around that second to last corner, you could go, that's understandable. But to then move a car out of the way that quickly, it's not happening. And that's the point for me. Is why is Vettel so slow through that final corner? And if he's trying to get out of the way if he's trying to wait for some sort of opportunity for clear air or whatever, he's gonna have to bin that next lap anyway. And either way, he still needs to get off the racing line. That's his priority, is getting off the racing line. There's just no... For me, it's a flat out penalty. There's no excuse for it. I would also agree that there's a responsibility of the team, because the team should really let him know that there's somebody coming. But at the same time, I don't even think his team were expecting him to sit so slowly through the final corner.
So you don't think Bottas and apparently Sainz overtaking before turns 9 and 10 and then crawling between turns 9 and 10 where they were told not to go slowly, you don't think that's an issue?
I mean, it is to an extent, but it's more the fact of, think of it as like a lap 1 kind of in a race sort of incident. I know it's not a race, it's qualifying. I get that. That's on them. I think there was a responsibility of all the drivers to separate themselves as much as possible. Granted, Bottas backed everybody up, and yes, there's that unwritten rule that we just talked about, the gentleman's agreement. But ultimately, you're responsible for your car, and if you're impeding someone, you're responsible. And that's the same for a racing, a race, crack collision, say on like a lap 1 of a track, for example. Yes, he might bunch up very close at the front of you, but if somebody goes into the back of you, then and you're parked on the racing line, I think that's on you. That's on you. Obviously, there's the difference between race and qualifying, in that in race that you're entitled to be there, and in a qualifying you're not as entitled to be there. And normally in a race is the person behind you that's at fault. But I think the principle still stands.
I do agree. I would just question, what is the point of the FIA saying don't go slowly between turns 9 and 10 then? What was the point in them saying that? If they're not going to enforce it, why even bother?
Absolutely. Exactly. I mean, it is more of a, I guess, if they put out there as we would strongly advise not doing this, then that's a different story.
Which I think it might have been. But
don't do this because we'll penalise you, then there needs to be a penalty there. I think that's a track-specific rule. They should not be going slowly through 9 and 10, no matter what.
Yeah, I think that they should, again, it's weird. F1 is to me, in general, heavily over-regulated. They go into far too much detail. I understand why. I understand how we got ourselves into this situation. However, we've now got a budget cap. You don't now need to over-regulate. Now you can be a bit more vague, and it's up to the teams where they spend their resources. Previously, when there wasn't a budget cap, you over-regulated to stop them spending too many resources, to narrow down certain avenues so they wouldn't spend millions chasing, whatever, tiny detail. So I do understand that anyway, that's overregulated for the most part. The technical regulations are overregulated. But it seems instances like this are underregulated. They just sort of vaguely say don't go slow between turns 9 and 10. Why not say turns 9 and 10, you have slowest you can go through between those two apexes is 5 seconds or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Set down a rule and say if you take longer between turns 9 and 10, take longer than 5 seconds without having a problem with your car. And I'm not talking about someone's just overtaken me. I mean a problem with your car. You get a grid drop. That's simple as that. It's weird.
Yeah.
They're overregulated in terms of technical regulations, underregulated in terms of sporting regulations. It seems it comes back to the overtaking rule we were talking about earlier with the wheel to wheel thing. Again, underregulated. It's just vague. Make it specific. It's I don't know. It's weird. When we become the new Bernie Ecclestone or the new John Todd, me and Raggy are going to take over the FIA one day, and we'll fix all this. Don't worry, guys. We'll make sure that we for all these decisions, we'll do a little stream on the Alex Gillen YouTube channel. We'll look at the comments and we'll go from there. That sound good?
Yeah, I like the sound of that. Yeah. But just on touching that, it is very much a safety regulation, to be honest, through 910 because it is so blind. You're almost stepping into. Is it Billy Monger? I think that's his name, isn't it? Billy Monger, the guy, the young lad who had lost his legs because of a crazy incident. You're stepping into that level of territory. If that was a little bit further up, coming through turn 9, there is no way Alonso was going to be able to avoid back out of that because you're loading the car up through there and you're so fast. I think it's very, very risky.
So then on to drive of the day. Now I actually for this one we have a little sheet here where we get these from, and I make a few notes and stuff. And this week I decided to remove the names. We normally have Alex, Raggy, and then next to that we put which driver we want. This week I thought, you know what, I'll remove that so we don't claim dibs on a certain driver of the day. And guess what old Ben Raggy here has done?
Me notice.
He has created a new line and he's apparently dibs. So go ahead with your dibs. Go on, Raggy.
I want to say, right, I specifically didn't choose the driver that I know you're going to choose, which is because I knew you were going to choose him. Okay?
All right, fine. I'm going to choose someone else. You don't even know who I'm going to choose. I'm still going to choose someone else.
I know who you were going to choose. Tell me you weren't going to choose Norris. Tell me honestly, and with your hands up, that you were never going to choose anyone else other than Norris.
Norris was a possible choice, I would admit.
Don't lie to me. You absolutely were going to pick him.
Anyway, go on. Sainz.
I went Sainz. I think Sainz, first of all, you got to point out that he's in a pretty rubbish car, let's be honest. I mean, they've had tracks where they've been very successful, but they've had other tracks where they've been horrific, and even the Williams have actually outdone them. I think, look at qualifying. Russell, yes, he only got into the top 10 because of the Alonso Vettel situation, but when it came down to the pace in particular, they were already ahead of them. And so, to pull that Ferrari up the field and finish up in P5, again, yes, because of Perez's penalties, but still, that would have been a P6 regardless. Well, yes, but he would have given that position back had he not made the overtake happen, which something Leclerc couldn't do. So you got to ask that, is that really? I think had they been left to race themselves, I think it would have been Sainz overtaking Leclerc anyway. But I get the sneaky suspicion that there was a team order, which is not a surprise for Ferrari, which was don't attack Leclerc, and we'll give you an opportunity later. And then he eventually was allowed to get past, and then he pushed through. I think absolutely Sainz is a solid contender for driver of the day.
Yeah, I was just looking at the previous result. I couldn't remember the last result when they both qualified in the top 10 and both finished outside the top 10. It was France where that happened, which was a bit of a shock of a race for them. But yeah, I think that's. I will say I'm a little bit surprised. I would have expected you to go for Norris or Verstappen or someone, but yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from. My driver of the day is going to be Nikita. No, I'm joking. It's so hard to overlook Norris. It's got to be Norris. I know it's obvious. I know it's the official driver of the day. I know Raggy's just going to say, I told you so. But look, it's got to be Norris. It's got to be Norris, hasn't it? What a weekend from the guy. He was, let's go back to qualifying, half a tenth off pole position. I know Max wasn't happy with his final lap. Irrelevant. He beat both Mercedes, who did both get 2 laps. Unbelievable to get only half a tenth off Max, and he was looking like he was going to do it to the final turn. He was ahead going into the final turn. He very, very nearly did it. Wasn't meant to be. Unbelievable qualifying. Everybody was like incredible. And then to be genuinely battling Mercedes in the race. And I will say, before Hamilton had his issue, after he took his penalty, he was behind both Mercedes. He was holding pace to them. I was watching the gap. I think there was maybe 3 seconds between Hamilton and Bottas, and then 3 seconds between Bottas and Norris. It was staying there. He was holding his own against a Mercedes. And okay, the Mercedes isn't the fastest car anymore. It's still a damn good car. And look, the previous race, they flew away from him, I think. Let's go back here. Oh, he was lapped. What happened in the last race? Was there a reason he was lapped, or was that just pace? I think that was just pace, wasn't it? Here we are last week. I don't think there was an issue. Again, he was up there in the start, wasn't he? And then decided basically, I'm just going to let him through because that's not my race. He was miles away last time out. I don't know what happened this time. I don't know whether they had an update, whether it was set up. Genuinely had Mercedes pace today. Unbelievable. And let's not forget, he's still fairly new to the sport. He's not as experienced as Hamilton or even Verstappen. Certainly not someone as like Raikkonen or someone like that. Or even Ricciardo. Ricciardo's pretty experienced now. Yet he's able to hold his own against a 7-time world champion of Lewis Hamilton, who we know is damn good, and he was holding his own. Yes, he did eventually get through, but it took him 20 laps in a faster car to get through. So I don't know what kind of witchcraft Norris did for this weekend, but I hope he can keep it up. It's impossible to look past him for driver of the day. Anyway, I want your guys' driver of the day. Put in chat right now who you think should be driver of the day. This little widget, I can never point in the right direction the first time. This little widget down here is going to look at the last 60 seconds of chat and tell us the top 5 most used words from that last 60 seconds. I see a few people are atting Ollie for some reason according to that. But give me your driver of the day. Just put their surname only. So if you want Norris, put Norris. If you want George Russell, put Russell. Make sure you spell it right as well, so otherwise it won't count. And just put your driver of the day, and we'll get the official Alex Gillen YouTube channel driver of the day. Which will it be different from mine or Raggy's choices? Will it be different from the official one? Let's see. Matthew,
actually, I also want to mention I would have gone for Norris had I known.
So even though you called dibs, you still didn't go for your first choice.
I didn't really call dibs. I deleted
the dibs part, and you reinserted the dibs part. You forced the dibs. I'm going to delete your dibs again.
I also want to mention in favour of Norris. Had Norris not got the penalty, he would have been P2 because he would have been out ahead of Bottas, true. And there's no way Bottas would have been able to fight him because he was just too fast in the straight line. I think it would have come down to a talent off. And I think if you look at it statistically, Norris is out of his league, right? Statistically. If you look at it from a talent perspective, he's showing he deserves to be among those guys.
So Russell's now catching up, but I think people will just stop voting a little bit. But interestingly, for a while there, we actually had Norris in P1 and Lando in P2. So I think we can safely say that you guys agree it is indeed Lando Norris, because it's got to be, isn't it? What a weekend he's had there. Right, then let's get on to the last 2 points, which is our honourable and dishonourable mentions. So first of all, on the honourable mentions, I've got a little list here. I've put Verstappen, obviously. What a sublime weekend for Verstappen. We didn't see him much, and he didn't do anything too spectacular, which is why Norris is more driver of the day, because he outdrove the car a bit. But, look what Perez is doing in the same car. Qualifying was about half a second or so, and then clearly, race just completely superior, wasn't he? He's just sublime in the race. Unbelievable race from him. You cannot fault him. He even got a spare pit stop over the field. I put Bottas. Solid result from him today. He was out-qualified by Hamilton only by about half a tenth or so. It was pretty close. And then was there when Hamilton got his damage. Yes, arguably probably wouldn't have beaten him without Hamilton's damage. But, again, I go back to the point. He's there to be Mercedes' second driver, and he does it very, very well. He had a good race today. I really thought he did have a good race today. I put Norris, just in case we didn't put him driver of the day. Obviously, we've already mentioned him. I put Ricciardo ? Because qualifying, obviously, Ricciardo really struggled. For some reason, Ricciardo can't seem to qualify this car, but race day, he comes alive. He finished P7 in the race, did a very, very good defensive job towards the end there. And then, where did he qualify again? Wasn't it like 13th or something? 13th. He qualified 13th. Obviously, really bad qualifying, which is why I put the question mark after his name. But to finish P7, it was a solid day today. Could have very easily been even potentially 5th. if he was just able to find another couple of seconds to defend a little bit more. But I thought he was worth an honourable mention. Alonso, although he only just snuck a single point, unfortunately it was at the expense of George Russell, of course. But without getting balked by Vettel in qualifying, probably would have been up there with Ricciardo somewhere. Probably, arguably could have beaten Ricciardo just by starting much further ahead. So maybe even could have got sort of P5 here or so. So really good weekend from Alonso. It's good to see him getting up to speed with his car. And then finally, for the honourable mentions for me, is obviously George Russell. So close to a point. Why can he not score any points in his Williams car? So close. What was it? 2 laps from the end, Alonso took it off him. I thought he defended well, by the way. He defended as hard as he could without going over the limit, and he defended well and just wasn't meant to be today, unfortunately. Also, top 10 in qualifying, P9 on the grid. He did it on mediums as well. Really, really good result from George Russell. Honestly, you guys put him only second as your driver today, and I agree. He was definitely up there. A really good weekend from George Russell. Any other honourable mentions there, Raggy? I feel like that was a fairly complete list, but maybe you got some more.
Sainz. She didn't put him on there.
So you want Sainz as your driver today and as your honourable mention?
I think he did that well. He deserves it, personally.
All right, fine.
Yeah.
So,
but other than that, no, really. I think everybody else was kind of either meh or. I mean, we need to put Mazepin in dishonourable mentions, though, don't we?
Well, yeah, let's go on to dishonourable mentions. So I've just put. Hang on, let's get this in there first. I've just put Perez, because again, although the incident wasn't his fault with Norris, he certainly could have backed out of it and stopped it happening. He probably should have been P2 today with Mercedes' issues and whatever. He should have been P2. He's P6. Not good enough. Half a second off in quali as well. Not great, but we know how good Verstappen is. I've also put Raikkonen. I've seen a few issues from Raikkonen recently, and I don't know if it's age. I don't know what it is. He keeps making weird mistakes. I mean, he hit. Was it George? No, was it George Russell? He hit George Russell with his rear wing towards the end of the race.
Oh, yeah.
Turned in and just hit him with his wing, and I was like, "What was that? That was clumsy and weird." And then obviously Vettel just sort of turned over on him and took him out. Weird race from Raikkonen. I've seen it
what?
in the.
Repeat what you just said.
Did I say Russell? I meant Vettel.
No, and you said Vettel, but
Raikkonen.
Clarify who turned in on who.
Raikkonen turned in on Vettel.
Okay, thank God, because the way you said it sounded like Vettel turned in on Raikkonen.
Raikkonen's
and that's
fault.
why I was like, what?
No.
Yeah,
Raikkonen's fault. Just turned over on him. Weird incident. And I've seen it from him in the last couple of races. I can't recall exactly, but there's definitely been some other incidents where I've just been like, that was weird. So, yeah, I don't know. Will this be Raikkonen's last season? Is he out of contract at the end of this season? I'm not too sure. But for me, he was deserving that. Go on then, Raggy. Dishonourable mentions.
Mazepin. What is he doing? What is he doing? Pace-wise, shocking. He's nowhere. And, yes, starting the season off in F1, but so is Schumacher.
Heavier car, apparently, though.
Say again?
Heavier car, apparently, though.
What, between him and Schumacher?
You not seen this?
No.
No, Haas have said it. So Mazepin came out and said something, like, oh, it's so hard with a heavier car, whatever. And then they've kind of dug a little bit deeper, and Haas have admitted, yes, actually, there is a difference between the chassis. Mazepin has got a heavier car for now, but we think it'll be fixed after the summer break.
Okay, then I will retract that dishonourable mention then for now. Purely based on the fact of that.
I don't think he's had I'll be surprised if he's had a heavier car since race 1, because his dad effectively owns the team now. He doesn't, but he will. So I don't see why they would give effectively the team owner the worst chassis. I assume what's happened is they both started with this bad chassis, the heavy chassis. Unless they've run out. Was there a big crash? Did they run out of chassis and have to use an old one that's heavier? I don't know. But
he's probably crashed them all.
What I would have assumed would have happened, they had an upgrade, and they would have given the points leader, the better driver, the upgraded chassis, which is what I assumed happened. However, you can't really change the chassis, can you? So what has happened is, because they're constrained on budget, because they're concentrating next year, maybe there's not been a huge crash though. So they've both had a few little crashes, but there's not been a huge crash. It's just been suspension and wing. There's not been like a chassis damage like Russell and Bottas in Imola. There's not been a huge crash, has there, with the Haas?
I don't remember any. But,
yeah.
I mean, it depends, really, doesn't it? Because I think he's had some practice crashes that have been pretty severe. I don't know if there have been any that needed to repair his chassis or not. But I mean, again, I'll retract my dagger from Mazepin's chest for now, just based on that alone. If
Schumacher
it is
crashed
down
in
to the
Monaco.
chassis, I think he's when it comes to the summer break and when we come out of it, he needs to be absolutely on the back of Schumacher at least, in order for him to be considered doing
Worthy.
okay. Yeah, because otherwise, I think he's just absolutely in the wrong spot. I mean, I've always said since I've heard about him and seen his driving, taking all of his personality out of the equation, just looking at him as a driver, I don't think he's suitable for F1 anyway. Mainly based on his F2 antics, but who knows? Well, let's see what he's got when the car is at the same weight as what Schumacher's got. Let's no longer compare him to Schumacher until we've got confirmation that the cars are actually the same. But we'll see. We'll see.
RR Jenab's saying it's about 10 kilos, less than 10 kilos. I've not heard an exact number put on it, but I've heard that it's not much. And Gunther Steiner's come out and said like it's a bit heavier, but it's not making a massive difference. But then Mazepin came out and said, no, the weight alone isn't, but it's affecting what I can do with setup. It's affecting what I can do with ballast. It's making the whole thing is having a bigger effect than just purely the weight. So I don't know. It does muddy the waters a bit, which is slightly annoying. But as I said, hopefully they have the same chassis. After the summer break, then we can have a proper comparison. Because I agree, he's just not been doing good enough.
No.
Ocon's had off a couple of races as well. Is he worth a dishonourable mention? He got a bit unlucky, to be fair, at the start to damage his steering rod that easily. It was quite a minor tap, and arguably he could have backed out a bit earlier. But it's the start. I don't know. It was unlucky, I would say, more than bad.
I don't think you can blame him. I don't think you can blame him. I mean, I don't like Ocon, both as a driver and as a personality person. I really just strongly dislike him.
Throwing the shade right in his face.
Ocon, I hate you. But I think today was absolutely not his fault. There was nothing he could do. He was completely stuck in the situation. He was trying to get the most out of what he'd got from the start, and he just got completely squashed again. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but it was Raikkonen again, wasn't it?
Maybe.
It was the inside car for turn 2, 3.
Yeah.
3?
I can't recall. It was either those or the Haas.
No, well, there was a Haas on the left.
Oh, okay. So there was
a Raikkonen on the right. I think it was Raikkonen on the right.
Yeah, so there you go again. Yeah. Oh, well, anyway, there we go, guys. Thank you for joining us for this one. Apologies that we've not been that consistent with them recently. Raggy was, fighting for his life. Imagine.
I know.
Disgusting behaviour.
Forgive me.
But thankfully he's back to full health now. I've also moved house, obviously, hence the new rig and setup and stuff. So do subscribe to the channel because we will be doing these every single time. The next race, of course, is in 2 weeks' time. We have got the British Grand Prix. Are you going to the British Grand Prix at all, Raggy?
Unconfirmed currently.
Oh.
Probably not.
Suspense
but I would love to. However, have you heard my news? I've told you my news, haven't
I? What's your news? Go on.
That I have a new job.
Go on.
I am now a colleague of Alex Gillens. So you're a content creator for Traxion, and I am a community manager for Traxion, starting in 2 weeks' time. And they're based in Silverstone. So I don't know if I'm necessarily going to be going into Silverstone itself at any point during the Grand Prix, but I honestly have no idea at the minute. I have no idea. We'll have to wait and see. I've also had confirmation from Sanak in chat that it is Giovinazzi.
Yeah, I just saw that, yeah. Well, congrats on the new job. I did know that. I just want you to announce it to stream just to build up a little bit. But I don't know if I'm going to Silverstone yet. I would like to. I'm a little bit closer now, but I'm still probably 2.5 hours away from it. I've not got tickets at the moment. I would like to go do a bit of networking. I've got a few friends that are going there, but we will see on that one. But anyway, the actual race will be for everybody in 2 weeks' time. We will do another one of these streams on this Sunday straight after, so do tune in for that one in 2 weeks' time, 6 p.m. normally, just afterwards. So join us for that one, guys. Thanks for joining. I don't know, there's an advert on my own site at the bottom. That's a little bit annoying. Shall I go back to the results? There we go. That's a better way to finish the stream, isn't it? Thanks for joining, everyone. We'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.